Well, welcome back. And before we get started on the next one, I want to show another short video from one of our platinum sponsors, Star Gems.
Founded in 1981, Star Gems Group is a vertically integrated diamond and jewelry house. The group is known for its sourcing, trading and polishing of rough diamonds, as well as the wholesale and retail of polished diamonds and jewelry. With offices in Angola, Antwerp, Dubai, Johannesburg, Hong Kong and Mumbai, Star Gems has a global presence. Today, the group is a key player in the industry, facilitating the sourcing of rough diamonds. Star Gems shares a strategic partnership with the Dubai Diamond Exchange to host tenders. The tender house is the only one which has its results governed by the Dmcc. In 2021, Star Gems organized 14 rough diamond tenders, selling 2.7 million carats for approximately 780 million US dollars. Apart from their factory in Johannesburg, the group established a state-of-the-art diamond manufacturing facility in Angola's Sodimo. Over the years, Star Gems has pioneered in manufacturing exceptional stones in their Johannesburg factory. They have successfully polished many DFL stones ranging from 10 to 100 plus carats. Recently, Star Gems and Petra Diamonds entered into a partnership to manufacture and market 2 exceptional stones. Star Gems also provides high-quality polished diamonds for its retail stores and clients. With a strong presence across the UAE, Star Gems has its retail units in key locations. All their jewelry is certified by HRD Antwerp, ensuring their customers the finest quality products. From rough to retail, Star Gems strives to offer its clients unparalleled quality.
Very fitting that we've moved from rough to retail. And so now I'd like to welcome back on the stage Anish Agarwal, who's going to take us through a retail panel where we're going to look at what the consumers are thinking. Anish, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Martin, again, and I hope you all had a great break. Time is short, so we're going to dive straight into the second session as we head downstream. Everybody here knows that their future depends on consumers buying diamond jewelry. But here's a challenge. Nobody needs diamonds. They don't serve any functional purpose. People buy diamonds because of the emotional value it brings to them, because of what it symbolizes. That sort of sounds scary, I guess, but we shouldn't be scared by this. There are lots of products that sell on emotion. Handbags, watches, these are very successful categories. Sometimes people close to me try to persuade me that it's totally worth spending thousands of dollars just to be able to carry your possessions around. But the trouble with these types of products that sell on emotion, these discretionary products, is this. If you don't stay emotionally relevant to the consumer, it can have serious consequences. And that's especially true now when we are confronted with a range of new factors, especially now. Let's talk about retail. I think it's fair to say that if we look at retail in our industry, we've failed to modernize and innovate historically compared to other luxury sectors. And this is a big issue for our sector because diamond jewelry retailers play such an important role in educating the consumer, getting them over the line. COVID was a big wake-up call for retailers everywhere. Weak players went out of business. But there was an upside. It catalyzed a move towards retailers developing an omnichannel approach to selling to consumers. This isn't just about getting online. Sure, we've seen some physical stores set up a digital presence, but we've also seen it go the other way around. Blue Nile has set up showrooms. In the end, it's about taking all these different channels, taking all the information and insight you can get from them, and giving the best possible consumer experience. So retail is shaken up, but there's an even bigger evolution going on at consumer level. We're confronted with Gen Z, the next wave in our consumer cycle, and they're much more socially conscious. The issue around generational changes, it's not about passing the baton from one group of people to another. It's about a shift in values in the way all of us think. Right now, Gen Z don't have a big share of the diamond wallet, but they've got a disproportionate voice in shaping how all of us think and even how our culture is defined today. Sustainability has become a big thing. We've got to the stage where sustainability is becoming part of almost any business conversation we have. It's become a broad catch-all term for a diverse set of topics: the environment, gender and racial equality and empowerment, ethical values, and it's challenging governments and industries everywhere. It's going to have a real impact as to how consumers, retailers, and especially the media relate to our diamond jewelry product. Now, there's a widespread view that many of us have, and it's easy to be sympathetic with, which is consumers talk a lot about sustainability, but when it comes to buying something, they forget their thoughts about sustainability. All that talk about sustainability goes out of the window. The booming fast fashion industry shows this could be true. There's even a case to be made that sustainability should be a lower priority when it comes to diamonds. For one thing, people don't buy diamonds very often. And when they do, it's actually got a lower environmental impact compared to other choices they would make. The carbon footprint of the engagement ring you buy is going to pale into insignificance compared to the plane journey you make on the way to the honeymoon. But we know that isn't the full picture, because different rules apply to different products depending on why you buy them and what they symbolize. In the case of diamonds, there are different rules because diamonds symbolize our biggest aspirations. They symbolize our biggest emotional commitments and investments. So there's a change in the consumer dynamic. How is it going to affect the way they connect to diamond jewelry? And how does it feed into the debate around lab-grown diamonds? Diamonds are a luxury product. And luxury is dominated by prestige houses who do most of the marketing and drive most of the desire. In the past, mention of sustainability was buried somewhere in a marketing campaign. Now it's become a core brand value. Hermes, a brand that has built its heritage on leather, has started to experiment with mushroom-based alternatives. Chanel has stopped using all its exotic skins, which were the basis of its most expensive handbags. Pretty much every prestige house has stopped using fur or is in the process of doing so. What these brands think about lab-grown diamonds is going to be crucial. And they might be more open-minded in private than they're willing to say in public. But a barrier could be this: can a lab-grown diamond even be luxury and aspirational if it's cheap? Culturally, as consumers, we are conditioned to equate expensive with better. The financial pain of buying a diamond is what makes it so prized to begin with. Lab-grown diamonds mess with this psychology. Can you really get the same buzz for buying something that's a fraction of the price? But on the other hand, everybody here knows this. No one wants to feel ripped off. No one wants to be a sucker. No one wants to spend 2, 3, 4 times the money on something that is physically identical. It's only the origin that sets a lab-grown diamond and a natural diamond apart. The trouble is that as an industry, we have marketed based on emotion and symbolism. Origin hasn't been part, historically, of our marketing history. Did we leave the door wide open for lab-grown to come in and leverage all the diamond equity that we built over decades? And it gets a lot more complicated when lab-grown and natural are offered side by side, described using the same 4 Cs. They've got a Gem Lab certificate, same format, same lab. They're sold in the same store at the same address, in the same jewelry settings. Where does origin even fit into this? So we've got a complex set of issues here. The change in retail, the change in generation, the focus on sustainability and how consumers really relate to that, and the interplay with that and lab-grown diamonds. In the end, it's going to be consumers that determine where this all goes. Consumers are millions, if not billions, of diverse individuals across the planet. And it's easy for many of us in this room to feel disconnected from consumers. Many of us don't sell directly to them. The role of connecting with consumers falls on retailers, and that's why what we're going to do in this next session is talk to retailers. It is our great pleasure to introduce on stage Beryl Raff, CEO of Helzberg Diamonds, one of the largest retailers in the US, Shamlal Ahmed, who's CEO of Malabar Gold and Diamonds, who are one of the fastest growing retailers in India, and Stephen Lucia, Executive Vice President of Brands and Consumer at De Beers, and has probably overseen more consumer research than anyone else in our industry. I'd like to welcome you all up to the stage. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you. Welcome to Dubai.
Thank you.
Beryl, we want to jump in straight with you. What I'd just like to ask you is there have been some sound issues from our last session. So if you can talk quite close to the mic, apparently it's advisable.
Okay, well, give that a shot.
We know it's all about the consumer. Beryl, I wanted to start with you as one of the largest retailers in America and arguably the world. When a consumer comes into the store, at one of your stores, how has the conversation changed over the last couple of years during COVID?
Well, during COVID's been an interesting period. The consumer, when they walk in the door, they are moderately educated. They believe they are very educated, but they are moderately educated from what they've seen on the internet, and social influence is very big, the whole viral impact. So they have a lot of questions, be it a lab diamond or be it a mine diamond, they have lots of questions about the product. And then we look at the fifth C we define as the C of choice. We clearly are retailers of lab diamonds, and we show them both mined and lab. We explain, we answer their questions. We don't make decisions for them. They're the boss, and that's how we handle.
Thanks a lot, Beryl. And you've talked about lab-grown diamonds. I want to park that for now. We will talk about that. In the first part of this discussion, we really want to focus on consumers. So the fact that the consumer conversation is changing. Shamlal, from an Indian perspective, you cover a completely different dynamic. How are consumers changing? How have they changed in the last 2 years?
So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to this conference on behalf of Malabar Gold and Diamonds. Jewelry usage in India, it's connected to a lot of our traditional and cultural values. We have a recorded usage of more than 5,000 years of jewelry usage in our country. There are a lot of emotion and culture attached to jewelry shopping in India. One of the biggest market in India is wedding. As all of us know, bridal jewelry is the biggest trousseau during a wedding. So, demand, the market size of India as well, we are about 65-70 billion US dollar jewelry market in India, and it is growing 6 to 7% every year. There's a huge shift happening towards diamond and studded category in India, especially during post-COVID. We have seen a lot of revenge spending due to a lot of revenge spending happening in India. Huge demand for luxury goods, especially in diamond category. And there's a proposal trend happening in India like West. During the proposal, the millennials and Gen Z prefer to give half carat plus diamonds as a proposal ring or an engagement ring in India. And whatever occasions today, whether it is Valentine's Day, anniversaries is a big market in India today, especially milestone anniversaries, whether it is 5th or 10th anniversary, people prefer to give bigger stones in India. So the demand for diamond jewelry is tremendously increasing in India. There's a shift happening towards plain gold jewelry to diamond category in India.
That's a really big dynamic change from gold towards diamonds. We'll come back to that. Stephen, I want to ask you, you've done a good deal of research on evolving consumer trends. What new opportunities has COVID created for diamonds?
Do you know, it's been an extraordinary 2 years. And I think some of these changes we've seen are temporary, you spoke a little bit about, but I think some of them are permanent changes. And if I had to, I guess, pick a few out, I'll talk a little bit longer about the third, but certainly the importance of celebrating relationships has heightened during the COVID experience. And I laugh a little bit. I think it's part a result of the lockdown. And to be honest, you either broke up, got divorced, or reinforced your relationship. And we've seen that in more weddings, but also I think we've seen that amongst married couples who have been busy in their lives, suddenly thrown back together for hour after hour. And a result of that, they've actually have more appreciation for each other. And I think that's why sales of jewelry, which has always been the best way to show affection and emotion and commitment, have accelerated above other product categories, because there is that sense of, deep down in this strange world where nothing is predictable, our relationship is a rock to me. And the ones that survived got celebrated. So that was a trend. The other trend, and I think this is true of the more affluent end of our market, is that COVID created this sense of who knows what's going to happen in the future. So we better get on with doing what we want to do now. And that's led to, I think, that's not only for jewelry, but we've seen that across the luxury goods field in general, where people have been willing to make big expenditures at a time when you think, wow, that's so strange to make a big expenditure in a time when things are so unpredictable. But it's a consequence of that. If I don't buy it now, who knows what's going to happen to me in 4 years? We've seen Rolls-Royce sales rocket. You think Rolls-Royce sales rocket during the pandemic? People are saying, buy it now because I may not get the chance later. And so that has been, I think, on the affluent. But to me, the biggest change by far that's going to be the most enduring, and you've touched on it a little bit in your introduction, is around the way in which people buy things that impact some of the problems we have in the world. So, during the recession a decade ago, we saw climate change go off the agenda. Economics dominated it. I remember before that, like 2007, I was going to buy a hybrid car. I stopped worrying about any of that stuff. I just wanted to get through the economics of it. It's not true this time, and because I think this crisis helped people to see that they live in an interconnected world. The COVID maybe started in China, but it went everywhere, and you couldn't isolate yourself from it. And we live in this interconnected world. And I think when it comes to particularly climate change, but not only that, this sense of we're all in it together now has become more permanent. And I think where we get a little bit wrong when we discuss this is we always discuss it very rationally. We discuss it like sustainability and environmental impact, and we look at all the details. To me, that the research is telling me something a little bit different, is that most consumers don't get into all the detail. But what they want to feel that the way in which they're projecting their image, and brands project image, that's what they do. Diamonds project image, as well as satisfy the internal emotional needs of consumers. So when you're projecting an image, you have to say, what image do you want to project? And you want to project, I think, increasingly, that the things you're doing meet the values of the era that we're in. And I think that's where we're going to see the lasting impact from this.
Stephen, you've definitely made my job easier by giving a wealth of topics to talk about. You talked about the issue of relationship permanence, the idea of focusing on that. You talked about the issue of living in the now and spending money. And you talked a little bit about the issue of looking at world impact. When COVID started, in fact, Stephen was one of the people who I think was the first to say, at least the one that I heard, amongst the people I heard, was that we're going to benefit from the lack of experiential spend and that we're going to get a swing. Beryl, I want to talk to you and get your view on, do you think diamond jewelry sales just increased because spend got diverted away from experiences? Like, what do you truly believe about this? Is this a temporary boost?
I don't think it's just one thing. I think it's a multitude of things that happened. Stephen's point on how people felt, is 100% accurate. Relationships, when you went to commemorate a relationship, what do you do it with? You do it with something luxury. Then the other piece of it, you start to tick that down. You couldn't take your family on a cruise. You couldn't take your significant other on a cruise. You could hardly go out for dinner. You start to tick down. There weren't things that you could do. And demand unquestionably moved over to goods versus services. There's no question we benefited from that because the options became different. So how much is one versus the other? It's really hard to say, and what's going to endure in it. It's a combination of it all.
No, thanks. Thanks a lot for that. And what I wanted to ask you is, let's look at the issue of sustainability that Stephen's put on the table, the idea that people look at the world impact of what they buy. What's your take on sustainability? Is it really part of your conversation with consumers?
To a minimal degree at this point. I think it will become over years more important. The Gen Z customer who is age 10, they're not coming into the store too often, to age 25, they ask the questions. They're where the questions come from or any concerns come from. Obviously, as time goes on, that generation is going to move into the age of our core consumers, and it will become more important. But first and foremost, we don't really sell diamonds. We really sell aspiration and romance. That's what our product is. That's what it symbolizes. That's what makes somebody go buy a diamond, not because of the way it came out of the ground or didn't come out of the ground. That may be a secondary decision-making factor or a third factor in the decision, depending on who the individual is, and it shouldn't be ignored. It is important. It's important for the world that we all do the right thing. But I hope that as an industry, we do not make that so important that becomes our primary message versus aspiration and romance. If we lose the diamond dream, we have lost it all.
I've got quite a lot of questions.
Me? Okay.
I've put a second mic next to Beryl because I think she's trying to look at me, which I typically don't understand, but it's good.
You can look at me, Beryl. That's all right.
I'll look at you, Stephen.
You've now got a choice. I've got a lot of questions to ask you about this, Beryl, from a retailer perspective.
Okay.
Shamlal, I want to check in
It's kind of
with
odd
you.
to not look at the person talking to you, but we'll do that.
I want to quickly check in with you. From an Indian consumer perspective, how relevant is sustainability in terms of your conversations with your customers on the ground?
Sustainability has been the keyword or dominating many of the conversation during many industries as well as among consumers. But the reality is a small fraction of our consumers really value sustainability in our part of the world. It's maybe lack of communication, lack of marketing, that may be the reason. But going forward, I believe it is going to be a prominent decision-making factors, especially among millennials and Gen Z, and also for many other partnerships and associations. But it hasn't stopped us doing many sustainable activities like conflict-free, responsible sourcing, zero-emission factories, sustainable packaging, labor-friendly employments. But A small section of our younger audience still talk about sustainability because of their exposure with other retail brands. In the future, it is going to be a major decision factor when they choose the brand or the product.
Beryl, I want to come back to you, and Stephen, I've got some questions for you as well. Because you mentioned a couple of things. You talked about the younger consumer, you talked about aspiration and romance. Do you think that there is a danger that we put too much emphasis on sustainability in diamond marketing and divert away from the emotional equity, or the traditional emotional equity, or do you see them operating side by side?
I think there is a definite danger that we go too far towards sustainability at the sacrifice of emotion. I think we are today the retailer speaks for the industry to the consumer. The industry used to, in the days, Stephen, when you ran the marketing programs and they were outstanding at De Beers, the industry spoke to the consumer and created an overarching umbrella of demand. That's already lacking, which hurts significantly. If we lose what little bit we still have and we focus too much and make sustainability the first message, I think we jeopardize ourselves. In no way am I saying sustainability is not important, and in no way am I saying that all of us and how we run our companies and our businesses should not pay attention to it and do the right thing. It's putting it in the right priority order for where we are and where we're going in the foreseeable future.
Is there a case to argue, Stephen, that sustainability, and you can respond to what Beryl said as well as part of this question, but is there a danger that when we look at sustainability, it's just something that consumers expect? They want that ticked off. They want to see that there's a positive impact. But what moves them to buy something isn't the sustainability narrative in itself, but are the more classical emotional drivers such as aspiration and romance?
I think this isn't even a question. I agree 100% with what Beryl says. You have to separate what are motivators, what motivates someone to do something, from what creates, I guess, call it a cultural acceptance or a cultural permission to do something. And sustainability isn't a motivator to buy a diamond. That's not why I'm going to go buy one. What motivates me to buy a diamond is what I wanted to say to the person I give it to, or what I wanted to say about me. And, we could get into the complex motivations. Diamond is a complex product that targets people on many different levels. It's not one-dimensional. We talk about the ultimate commitment and symbol of love, and that is a powerful differentiator, motivator. And we're so fortunate because, if there's one thing that I think is eternal in the world, is love and commitment. It's not going away. And if we can own that, we must seek to do that. And I think we've seen new opportunities emerge, which I'm sure we'll get into, which I think if we tap creates huge opportunity. But let's just, again, maybe I wasn't so clear about this sustainability. To me, it's about status. That's what when I say it's emotion, it's about status. It's not about detailed technical understanding of sustainability, or even whether deep down I really care or not. But I do care about status. And
Stephen, I need to quickly ask you a question. Sorry to interrupt you. De Beers has put a lot of effort and a lot of time and resource behind sustainability issues. And a lot of what comes back out are quite factual and rational communications. First of all, why did you do that? And second of all, how do you make the leap from those quite detail-oriented reports to the emotional equity you're talking about?
Yeah, and one thing about the world of, and here's where I think we have to do this, because I think that if you don't have your product category positioned against these issues, in the long run, you're going to lose consumers from your category. So you need to do it, but don't confuse that with a motivation to buy. They're different. They're two different things. And in this world of to me, sustainability, I don't even really like the word. To me, the better phrase is people and planet. Because in our world, it's about balancing the impact on people and the improvement of people's lives and protecting the planet. And we've got to balance those two those two issues, because a planet with people in desperate state ain't any better than people in great state on your planet. You have to balance it. And you can't fake that. That has to be real, and it's not marketing. Huh? If you market that, you will be shown up in time. So it has to be authentic. And to be authentic, you have to start with the actual programs in place, the details, the fact base that's real. And it's one of the reasons why I encourage everybody in this industry to get involved in something like the RJC, because it helps you, wherever you are, to start to develop your fact base. But that's not enough. That takes, that will bring your influences with you. But the consumers, they need it really simple.
We're going to come back to this. It's a very important issue of sustainability. Let's park this for a moment. Shamlal, I want to bring you into the picture and change topic.
Yeah, I just want to add what Mr. Stephens said. There's a lack of visibility of marketing initiatives towards this in our country. In some part of the world, even in UAE. It should be, marketed well.
Do you think this is a general problem in India, just before we change topics, that Beryl mentioned the lack of category marketing? The idea that De Beers used to do category marketing on behalf of the whole sector. Obviously, De Beers' position changed and marketing evolved with it. But did India get hurt by lack of category marketing, or did India prosper despite the lack of category marketing that we saw historically?
I didn't get the answer the question well.
How do you think the lack of category marketing that De Beers did historically, how do you feel that impacted the Indian market? Did you feel that there was a loss, a gap in marketing that needed to be done in driving culture?
Sorry.
Okay, we're going to come back to category marketing because it's a really interesting topic. Let's just talk about this omni-channel development that we've talked about. So the idea of physical stores and digital presence. When you look at the Indian setup, how important is that online component, Shamlal, in your business?
That's an interesting question, actually. Across organizations and individuals, the digital transformation is happening at a fast pace, especially after COVID. At the moment, there is only a small percentage, close to 1% of our sales happens through e-commerce. But the digitally influenced to sale is going to be 30%. That's what we're realizing. Due to its convenience, people explore or discover about the brand and the product at digital platform. They come to offline store for their final purchase. So, to give them the true omni-channel experience for the future customers is very important. So we are investing heavily in infrastructure, people, and technology to be in pioneer in this industry. We call it as millennials and Gen Z as digital natives, the kind of exposure they have in the digital space. It is very important to give, because most of this product they buy for some celebration or an occasion. So we want to give the same type of celebratory experience when they do even shop online.
Can I just quickly cut to you, Beryl, then? Helzberg was one of the more traditional stores in terms of these days you call it bricks and mortar. In the old days they called it bricks and mortar. What role has digital played for you as a retailer?
As it happened for everyone, when COVID hit, the digital business exploded. The digital business is the future. It's not just selling off of the internet. I mean, that is a large component of it. But the internet site is the front door to the store. I mean, it's where the consumer goes to research, they go to learn, they go to compare. The vast, well, I don't want to say the vast majority, but a very large percentage of consumers who come in and shop bridal with us have shopped it on the internet first. They've gone through and they've looked. I have to look at Stephen. Okay, sorry.
They're getting doubled up.
I wanted to give you the option.
My husband would never believe I couldn't be heard. He would never believe that. So to back up for a second, the digital business exploded when COVID started to happen. but it's bigger, way bigger than just selling online. It interrelates with all of the marketing. The internet is the front door of the store. It's where the consumer goes first to research, particularly in the world of bridal, which is so critical to all of us. That's where they learn, that's where they compare. They come in with their questions, they come in with sheets of information that they've printed off. So your website has to be a friendly information center. It has to be a store. You know, it has multiple functions, and how the social channels fit into that is also critically important for sophisticated marketing. You know, and you could sum it all up, you know, with the new king of retail is data. You know, data is the most important thing we can all learn and mine and understand how to use, and we're using it all through the social channels. So it's way bigger than just an internet site.
Beryl, a quick question on this. Why do you think, and I know that you can't really comment on other people's strategies, but why do you think a retailer like Blue Nile set up physical showrooms and plans to open more?
I can only guess because they haven't called and chatted with me about it, but they're I'm sure looking to, you know, expand their exposure, broaden their marketing base, you know, and the consumer does, particularly for that kind of a product, want someplace to look and feel. You know, so, you know, they expand their market base that way, and they expand their brand, you know, and they still, you know, have their own twist to it.
So one of the things that Beryl has mentioned, Stephen, is the important role that retailers played in educating the consumer. So compared to a lot of other products, consumers may come into a diamond store not really knowing 100% what they want to buy beyond the idea that they want to buy a diamond or some sort of engagement ring. And we're going to come back to your fifth C later on, Beryl. The idea here is, what challenges does Omnichannel create? As we move more digital, what does it mean for the effectiveness of retail?
Yeah, challenge, I think opportunity. I mean, if I look through the COVID, you know, what do I think in terms of driving sales of diamond jewelry that happened during the COVID period that's permanent? And we've been, in some ways, lucky to have the need to build. We built an enormous industry muscle that we did not have prior in the whole digital marketing and e-commerce. As an industry, we were laggards compared to luxury goods, but broadly. And we were forced to act, as Beryl said, in COVID, and probably I can imagine how the speed with which you had to do it must have been remarkable. But that's now permanent. If you look at the MasterCard data on e-commerce sales in the US, you know, I take all data with a grain of salt, but we saw the big bounce in e-com when the stores shut, no surprise there. But then when the stores reopened, we saw the sales come back in the stores, but not decline in the e-com. And so my argument is we built a permanently higher level of sales now by engaging in that space where our competitors were and we weren't before. And that's hugely positive. Is that essential? I mean, you don't have to tell anyone in this room who has a 23-year-old child, I have 3 in the 20s, don't read a newspaper, never bought a magazine, never watch television unless it's Premier League football. The only thing they watch is sports live. Nothing else. Everything else they access through their laptop or their phone. Now, they're not really our customers yet, but in a decade, that's our customer, and if we don't have these skills, we're going to get clobbered.
Just to keep the balance here, Shamlal, did you want to say something about this?
Yeah, I completely agree with Mr. Stephen. So the digital influencer sale, what we are seeing is like there's a tremendous shift towards that. 30 to 50% sale will happen through digitally influenced. They do their research, they do their, exploration through online, and they come to offline. So I completely agree with him.
Do you think, like, if we look at some of these online retailers, and you can name some of these, but the big ones, we know what we're talking about, and people go through databases, they pick their diamonds, and then they pick the settings. Do you think that there's a risk that we're actually commoditizing diamonds by selling online like this? Do you feel it adds the same degree of value, Beryl, as it would if people went into a store, got the education, informed education, and made choices that way?
I think the diamond feeds, which you find on most people's sites, and I think the diamond feeds do commoditize to a certain degree. I think they really I think they target the male audience more than the female audience. Because the male audience will tend to be more black and white technical in how they approach it, and the female will tend to be far more emotional. So the approaches and the thinking are different. I think there is the beginnings of a trend to narrow down, and narrow in those enormous feeds, of diamonds.
You have to remember, Nish, this is a big market with multiple segments. So a lot of the time when we talk about, as Beryl is describing, to me that's very bridal, where you go on, you have the rational man thinking about the rational fact, the qualities, the 4 C's, and that's an important segment. But actually, what we miss out there is, if you ask me, what's the next big diamond market? If you asked me 20 years ago, I would have said China or India. I now say women's self-purchase is the biggest growth market we have. And that's going to operate on completely different dynamics, because that's where design is important, luxury is important, the environment in which they buy is all part of that. It's a completely different purchase process from buying a solitaire. So it's important we segment this market and then develop the approaches that are required, which are completely different, to really develop it to its full potential.
So I question, Shamlal, I've got a question for you in a moment, but I just want to put on the table, the worry could be something like this. We rely on retailers the physical stores to play the education role in getting people over the line, in understanding what they want, understanding the magic of diamonds, understanding the emotional value of diamonds. As we shift to an omni-channel experience, and a bigger chunk of that goes into digital, right? Could we have a risk that consumers will start looking at diamonds through the 4 C's and trying to attribute that way? How do we make up that deficit? That would be the kind of question maybe we can come up to. But Shamlal, I've got a different question for you. You've, as a retailer, transitioned from gold to diamonds. And in the bridal category, people in India bought gold as almost like an investment, a safe haven store of wealth. Are people buying diamonds in India for the same reason that they're buying gold in your experience?
Yeah, I have a point, like Mr. Stephen also said. There are a lot of new segment of consumer comes to diamond category today, especially on anniversaries. If it is a milestone anniversary, whether it is 5th or 10th or 25th anniversaries, people prefer to buy bigger solitaire diamonds. For engagement and proposal ring. Proposal is a new trend in India. During the proposal, people prefer to give solitaire diamonds, which was not there before. Even in Valentine's Day, even in special occasions like Mother's Day, Arab Mother's Day, it's one of the biggest market in GCC. So all these categories now, people prefer to give diamond as a most preferred gift articles. Because diamond is not just an object today. It's not just a piece of carbon today. It symbolizes many other things, commitment, new beginning, celebrating success. So the perceived value is much higher than the giving a product or a jewelry. So there's a tremendous shift happening towards gold to diamonds, and which is one of the biggest market. I heard Mr. Bruce talking about China and US. I think India is going to be one of the biggest market for polished diamond jewelry.
It's an interesting question that people bought gold for a store of value, and you're saying that people's purchasing motivations are changing as they go into diamonds, that there's more of an emotional angle to why people buy things. One of the things that Stephen said had an emotional angle earlier is sustainability. So let's just quickly go back to that. And in particular, its relationship with lab-grown diamonds. One of the things that struck some of us is that De Beers intensified its move towards building that sustainability narrative as lab-grown diamonds came onto the scene. Stephen, to what extent is that true? To what extent did you as an organization, build a sustainability narrative, highlight the good work that natural diamonds are doing as a response to a lab-grown position?
No, in reality, well in advance of that. And I think the conclusion that we drew, and I'd be interested in what everyone thinks, but the conclusion that we drew was that and it's, I think, true of particularly of luxury goods. It's not a diamond-specific issue. It's a luxury good issue. By definition, you don't need a luxury good. Now, I might argue that actually, to be human, we feel a deep need of the soul, and that's as important to living. So I often argue about whether it's, really discretionary or whether you need that. But nonetheless, luxury goods are not something that you need in order to heat your home or to transport yourself around. So how will the world look at luxury goods? And if you take the view that the world will define product categories by things like how they impact in a climate change world or how they benefit, to me the three big issues: climate change, inequality, both geographic and within society, and to me then diversity, and particularly for De Beers, gender diversity. So those are three big issues. And I think the world will view brands for sure, but I think in time categories by how they line up against those three measures. And so the De Beers view is that we need to get well ahead of this. And if you actually look at when we started those programs, they were a decade ago. And it takes time to do these things well. You have to, you need to develop a plan and a program and start executing. For De Beers to be climate neutral by 2030, that's a 10-year mission from when we kicked it off. But we felt that if we weren't there, 10 years from now, we could have a big problem.
Stephen, to ask a more pointed question, if we look at the emotional value of the emotional aspects of sustainability, so leaving kind of the rational arguments to one side, how do you think consumers see lab-grown and natural in terms of the emotional sustainability narrative today?
Yeah, I think it depends what you mean by emotional. I would say surface versus reality. The reality, as we know, is very complex, this question. In a large part because the lab-grown business is evolving. And the main production of lab-grown diamonds is going to come from today, probably from India, and in the future from China. China has a huge capacity from the industrial sector to produce lab-grown diamonds. And I can tell you, there's not renewable energy sources in either India or China. So there is the reality of the fact that there's a huge energy consumption that will describe the vast majority, not all of them, there are those which are renewable driven, but the vast majority of the category. But that, I don't think, is the perception today. And so the perception, and maybe it's just like an intuitive thing, well, it must be better than digging a hole in the ground. And so I think that for the natural industry is a task we have to educate, not about lab-grown, it's their business, but to educate about the positive impact of natural. And that's what I am interested in, because I think that the story, this combination of people and planet, this story that the natural industry can tell is very compelling. To me, it's not about telling, it's not us and them. It's much more important that it is about, the natural case, about us making sure that we're telling a story that then matches the aspirations and values and, in effect, the status that consumers want to project. And if we do that, we'll be fine.
So I think, Beryl, let's look at your experience. Helzberg as a business was an early mover in lab-grown diamonds. What was your thinking in offering lab-grown diamonds to consumers at that moment?
When we looked at it, and can you hear me? I mean, okay. Can you hear me? When we looked at lab, and we didn't look at it one day and jump into it the next. We did our homework and our research and talked about it a lot. and made the decision that this was a viable product category. It would probably work, no guarantees, and that we needed to learn, and test it and see what happened and tweak the test and go from there and ultimately see what the consumer tells us. And it took a tremendous amount of training, as well, because the front line of the sales associate, they had to learn.
And today you offer, and have continued to offer, lab-grown next to natural.
We offer lab-grown next to natural. We let the consumer tell us how far to go with it, and where to go with it. So, an inch at a time, it's gotten bigger. I personally believe it has expanded the total business.
When a consumer comes into a store, to what extent do they know they want to buy lab-grown or a natural diamond going in? To what extent is store education the crucial variable in molding what the consumer wants or discovering what the consumer wants?
The store education is critical to it. They come in with moderate knowledge that they think they know something they really don't. Both, whether it's mined or lab, whatever they've read on the internet, they ask questions. It's the store education on both products side by side where they make a decision.
And why do consumers buy lab-grown diamonds?
It's unquestionably a value proposition. It's the value for their money, what the product looks like, and price, quality, value. I mean, that's really what it is. They're putting one next to the other, and the visual difference is just enormous.
So when a consumer comes in, they want to buy, let's say, a bridal, a diamond engagement ring. They will consider lab-grown and natural diamonds as alternative approaches to achieving the goal of getting their engagement ring. Okay. Are there any other segments, so you've talked about bridal a little bit, are there any other segments where you're seeing lab-grown diamonds grow particularly?
We actually started, we did test loose stones probably 9 years ago. We were way early, and that didn't materialize. When we went back into the business, we started with fashion. Intuitively, that made the most sense to us. It has not turned out that way. The fashion business, personally, I think has a lot more potential than where we are today for a whole variety of reasons, some of which is just the pricing of smalls and what's happening in the marketplace. But as we tested bridal product, it way outperformed anything in our wildest imaginations, way outperformed fashion.
So are you seeing, I believe this is what you're saying, but I don't want to lead it. Are you saying that there's a category of consumers? So you've said two things. One, that you believe lab-grown will just grow the overall market, that these two products together will grow the whole space. But you're also saying that some consumers will buy lab-grown diamonds instead of natural diamonds when making, say, a bridal choice.
Yes, they will. But I do believe that both can live together very nicely. How they're going to actually settle into each other, there's a million different factors too, and time is going to tell. And I think there's a market for lab, and there's a market for mined, and there's a place where they intersect. And the biggest piece of that, and we sell, my company, we sell to the moderate consumer, to the upper end of the middle, the lower end of the upper. The broad base is our customer. We're not Tiffany, we're not Cartier. So we have a different kind of a customer. To that customer, what's happening is they're looking at, it's almost like the new 1 carat mined diamond has become a 2 carat lab. And without divulging specific numbers, I can tell you that in 2021, we sold in units 50 times more 2 carat labs than we sold 2 carat mines. So even if you want to think I sold 10 mine stones, which I sold a lot more than that, I still sold 50 labs, 500 labs. So, it's very significant in what's happening, and that customer took the average ticket up with it, where they would have been a $4,000 to $6,000 customer, they became a $7,000 to $9,000 customer. because the difference, is enormous. So I think when you're selling, a SI2, an I1 kind of a product and an HI color, and you're comparing it to a lab, the price difference can be absorbed, and the visual difference is enormous. If we were a higher end, and we were in a VS kind of product, then the comparison is going to become a price conversation and a different mentality customer, and where that would settle in, I'm really not sure.
Shamlal, I want to ask you about the Indian market. Some people believe that the US, what happens in the US eventually happens in other markets. Not everybody believes that, but some people do. What do you expect? Do you think what's happening in the US will eventually happen in India, or do you think it's just a totally different environment?
As far as Malabar, we are a retailer. So whenever we see a demand for lab grown, so whatever opportunity makes business sense, we'll definitely embrace lab grown, but maybe under the separate brand name. There are few factors actually holding back to go into this lab grown. First of all, price, which is going down. As a policy, whatever we sell, it has to be value appreciating gift articles. That is one of our tagline. So we're worried about the buyback, and whatever we sell today, we give cash buyback and exchange. So we are still figuring out how will we manage those risks. And in India, it is not just an object like I mentioned. There are a lot of other values attached to natural diamonds. So maybe a different category, a different set of audience, maybe for millennials and Gen Z, because this talks about emphasis on eco-friendly, low environmental impact, low price point. Wherein natural diamond, they talk about purity, rare, preciousness. So it has to be two different set of audience with different set of marketing strategy. But there is a market for both. Both will coexist. Rather than competing each other, it will definitely complement each other. As a category, diamond will grow. It will get more share from maybe other category like, sorry to say, Swarovski or other products. But I don't think it's not a competition for natural diamonds.
I mean, I think the kind of argument goes, and we don't know if this is actually the way it will play, but just to play devil's advocate, the argument goes that the difference between cubic zirconia and moissanite and all of these substitutes and lab-grown is that lab-grown diamonds can call themselves diamonds, right? And therefore can leverage the marketing equity that diamonds have built over a period of time. That's the potential challenge, and I think what Beryl is saying is that for sure these are going to coexist. There'll be a distinct market for lab-grown, there'll be a distinct market for natural, but there'll also be this point of intersection as well, where both products are in play at the same time and consumers choose between one and another. The question would be, Shamlal, just for you to think about for a moment, is in the Indian environment, how do you see that playing out? But before I come to you again, Stephen, what is your view on all of this? What research has De Beers done in why consumers would buy a lab-grown diamond or a natural diamond? What's the distinctive choice?
Yeah, as you know, we've got a lab-grown brand. So, we believe that there is opportunity and that this, will be a category that grows. So, but I think we have to step back and say we're still in the sort of twilight zone of transition. Interestingly, when I was here, 2019, on the panel, different hotel, same city, I think, I was challenged by, is this the end of the natural diamond world? By one of the participants opposite from the lab-grown world. And where are we now? In America, where lab-grown is the strongest, we've just had the strongest natural diamond sales in history in America. The growth, the incremental growth in natural diamond sales in America, forget the base, just the growth, is 3 to 4 times the size of the entire lab-grown business. So if that's a lesson that we're both going to be around, I think
that's
we
in
should,
dollar terms, not in percentage.
in dollars, yeah. So we should take confidence that there are plenty of consumers. Why I say we're in the transition, and we have to wait, I think, 3 or 4, maybe 5 years until we see where this lands, is that I'm seeing an increasing divergence. And to me, part of the natural diamond promise is based on an inherent rarity. There only is what the world made 1 billion years ago. They're there. There is an inherent rarity that drives an enduring value. And it's good that over the last 15 months to see diamond prices rising again, because I think that they need to be permanently so. Gradually, I hope. I don't like spikes, but that's part of the story. And I think when I said when I was here in 2019 that's the challenge of the lab grown. It does not have a natural rarity. So we've seen significant increases in production of lab grown. And if I compare it to when I was here in 2019, wholesale prices down 60%, varies a little bit by size, but 60% decline. The discount to natural in 2019 was about 20 to 30% for a similar size and quality. It's now somewhere between 70 and 80% at wholesale. If you track online, they're coming down roughly in line with wholesale. I think retail's done a bit better at holding the price line, but it's inherently going to continue. It's like an economic fact that as production increases, the costs of productions are falling, and without disclosing anything confidential, Lightbox can make a 1 carat for $300 or $400.
I think that there's
so it'll inherently continue to diverge. That doesn't mean it's not it doesn't have a role to play in the jewelry world. And I agree with Beryl that I think, to me, it's about how one markets it. Market it in the right way. I think we're going to see an expanded category. I think that's good. That's good for all players in our business. We need areas of expansion.
We need to talk about this and unpick this. And obviously, everybody in the audience, I want you to know we are running over. We started the conference a bit late, but from our perspective, there seems to be quite a lot to unpick. We'll try to wrap up in the next half hour, and not go beyond that. Stephen, I've got a lot of questions for you on this, right? Let's try to pick them off one by one. And you mentioned Lightbox. You launched Lightbox a couple of years ago. It was at an earlier stage in this lab-grown cycle. I guess the objective at that point was to create the differentiation, the differential positioning between lab-grown and natural. What sort of impact do you think Lightbox has now had on the market?
Yeah, it's probably better to ask that question to Lightbox's competitors rather than me. I mean, I think the core role Lightbox wanted to play is we do think there's an incremental opportunity for De Beers in this sector. And to me, the key thing is around what are the advantages of lab grown? It means we can produce these at very low cost. And I can tell you, recovering a natural 1 carat diamond, sometimes people forget that the natural 1 carat diamond, the cost of recovering that is subsidized by all the small diamonds that we get with it. If we were only recovering 1 carat diamonds from the world, it would be like $100,000 plus for every 1 carat that comes out. But because we get all the other small ones that we sell, we can lower that cost. So that's not what happens to us in the lab grown. We can create at very low cost what I think is a very appealing product to the eye. And that creates opportunity for us to open segments that we could never do with natural. So that's what is driving us. What impact has it had? I think it's had a significant impact on the wholesale price because it's visible what these products should cost. And I suspect Beryl's probably used that to drive very good deals with her suppliers, because that's the way she is. So,
Beryl, what does that mean for you? What impact did Lightbox have? What difference did it make?
the reality is, when we sell in a solitaire product, a mined solitaire product, studs and pendants, engagement rings, not so much bridal because it has a lot of melly on it, but a solitaire product, the margin to us as a retailer is less than my SG&A. So if I didn't have a whole lot of other things to sell, gold product and color stones to offset, I couldn't open my doors on mine product. Lab Diamonds has given us, an opportunity, and I believe it's given the vendor community an opportunity to make, a nice margin, on that product. And, yes, we have experienced pricing coming down, to varying degrees and varying on sizes, Stephen, as you said. But we have not experienced, and I hope we don't experience, and we're certainly not going to experience it at Hellsberg, the retailer sinking to the lowest common denominator, which historically we've all been pretty good at, and it's incumbent upon the industry to not do that, and along with that, if doing a little bit of homework, so I'm in a range of right, I believe, to just fill the pipeline that's out there in the world on Lab Diamonds, if that were to happen, would take something like 25 million carats of rough, which doesn't exist, and we're a long way from that happening. So as that slowly happens over time, and I'm sure it will, this business will sort itself out further, and it'll all find a comfort zone, and hopefully, the industry will be respectful of it. The bottom line is the customer has accepted the product. They've accepted it in bridal. They've accepted it in fashion. And those of us who do not Uberize our business will be Kodak'd.
Big statement. Is the challenge then, when we really look at this, that lab-grown and natural aren't really sufficiently differentiated? They're described using the same 4 Cs. You can have the exact same cert. You can set them in the same jewelry. You can describe them both as diamonds. What do you think? Do you think that's a core issue and allows lab-grown diamonds and natural to compete on what feels like a more even footing?
Yeah, yes, because they are both, they're the same, but they're different. And the retailer has to be honest, and accurate in how they describe and train to both of those things, and the customer is going to make their decision, based on their own emotion. A lab diamond does not say I love you any less than a mine diamond, and a mine diamond doesn't say I love you any more than a lab diamond.
I think that, just a couple of points here, and then I want Stephen to kind of respond to all of this. So a couple of points have been made, and they can be made on both sides of the fence. Diamonds are rare. By any way you mention, and you look at the Earth's crust, and you look at this, they're a scarce product, they're rare, they're finite. We know that alone isn't going to win the day, because certain gemstones are more rare than diamonds but are worth less. We know coal is a finite product, but that doesn't make it incredibly valuable. So we know that there are all these things, and in the end it's going to be about the emotion-based marketing combined with the other attributes that we're talking about, like rarity. And we've seen throughout history that when products become more commonplace, so here the challenge is that we've got a product that some people view as just a diamond, like a natural diamond. Stephen, the question for you, and I believe this is one of the biggest questions on today's panel, is do you think there's enough tangible differentiation between the way a natural product is presented at a retail counter compared to a lab-grown in a way that the natural should get a significant premium over the lab-grown? So it's consumer tangible differentiation.
I don't even like the question premium. I don't know what that, you're equating these two things as the same.
Or it's a more valuable product.
Yeah, well, it is.
Yeah.
Because it's far more costly to bring to the world. It is a more valuable product. And I think this is where I think that we're in this particular phase in the development. We won't really know for another 5 to 10 years. And I could put forward different scenarios for what that would look like. But to me, the fundamental thing is that the laws of economics here are going to, at some point, find their way to the world. and with, particularly with Chinese production gearing up. And, we've seen this in the industrial synthetic business, of which De Beers is a big player. We've seen the cost of industrial grit go from 30 to 20 to 10 to 3 to $1 a carat, because the Chinese have this enormous capacity and this ability to refine the technology and significantly reduce the cost. Inherently, you can get at wholesale a lab-grown diamond for $600 of good quality. So for how long are you going to be able to sell it for $6,000? We'll see. My own view is that the divergence in price will continue. Now, for some people, that's not important, because what does it look like? I'm happy. But those people probably couldn't afford to buy a 1-carat natural in 5 years either. So that's where I think this substitution is very tricky. Would they buy a natural diamond? Maybe buy a smaller one? Would they buy something else? It's very hard to say what's a substitute or not. We clearly see some substitution, but how will that evolve, over the next 5 years? And that's really, to me, this enduring value is important, and it's hard to explain. And I think it will take time to land with consumers. Because I'm sure Beryl will say, we see the same from our research, that people say, I'm buying the engagement ring, it's not an investment, I'm not going to sell it, so if the price comes down a bit, well, I'm not so worried because it looks beautiful on my finger. But you need to be able to leap forward. Let me give you one example. I know I don't want to use too much time, I'm sorry, but I had this interesting discussion just this week with my children about my watches. I'm a bit of a collector of watches. I've got 3 boys, and I said, you got to work out who's going to get one, who's going to get what. Can you work it out so there's not a big fight after I'm gone? And what they're really interested in is what's the value of that watch, because they were trying to even out the value between the 3 of them. And it made me think. Now, I don't know what it costs to make a Rolex Daytona. I don't think it's probably what I paid. But why is it important to me is that whatever I paid for it, when I leave it to my child, I think it's going to be worth more. They think it's going to be worth more. And this same Daytona, if I could buy this 10 years from now for $500, I don't think my kid would want the Daytona. They'd want something else. So the long-term value has not played out, and we have to wait. We've got to wait some time to get there.
I think that I'm the least qualified to talk about marketing on this panel. I don't understand all the nuances, but it strikes me that there is a difficulty here. Definitely understand that on the cost side, like many other technology developments, the cost will go down, and you'll be able to. And typically what tech providers do is that for the same price point, they offer you a better product, right? So over time, a laptop can cost the same amount of money as a headline price, but you get more stuff for your money. So there is an issue around that. But the bigger side remains the marketing side, like what does it mean for people? And if people talk about investments or values, then we're moving into the idea that people buy diamonds for some retained value, some investment value, and potentially not for the aspiration romance Beryl that you were talking about. I think that, and I don't know how these elements coexist. I don't know if Shamlal, you can take a crack at this in the Indian market. On the one hand, there's emotions. On the other hand, there's the investment angle. What are consumers, in your experience, really looking for?
Yeah, one of the key decision-making factor for buying jewelry in India is investment value. So people prefer to have value appreciating to their investments. So that's been the major reason for investing heavily in gold. So diamonds also has been increasing price drastically. So I think this is one of the reasons I'm a bit worried. What will be the price for lab grown in the future? So this will be one of the key decision-making factor, the value appreciation factor.
Do you think, Beryl, that if lab-grown diamonds got very cheap, that they'd become less desirable to consumers? And do you think that would have a knock-on effect to natural diamonds, or do you think that would just stay as separate categories?
I think that they would have to become like CZ's or moissanite, before that would happen, it would have to be a way bigger difference, than it is today. And then I think it would just simply become another category. That is a long way, from playing out. And Stephen, you talk about watches. You've got the proverbial there's a huge Rolex business out there. There's also a huge previously owned Rolex business out there. They live together, without any great problem. Prices of diamonds through the years have gone up and they've gone down. The consumer is pretty much not even aware of it because we all are understanding it on our side. So it isn't like there isn't precedent in the industry. There isn't precedent in diamonds themselves of price fluctuation and how things change.
I think the question is at what point, and I don't know the answer, but I'll just ask the question. To me, the word, it's not about financial value per se. It's about what's perceived as being something precious. And people use the expression precious and valuable. They go together. And, if you have to back up, why is a diamond, in the beginning, why did it become an engagement ring? Why?
Because you did a lot of marketing.
No, predates me. What we did is we democratized something that was already felt. And diamond was felt to be a precious thing, and as a result could be used to mark what were precious and enduring values. So, the line "a diamond is forever" means at the time of writing, we intended to be married forever. Didn't quite work out that way, but married forever, that was your promise. We used to say eternally elegant forever. So you could wear it your whole life and it would never go out of fashion. And third thing was it would have enduring value, preciousness. And that's why it could signify something that you never intended to get rid of and intended to be part of your life forevermore. So what makes something precious? And that's the question that I think we don't know yet. We'll see in 5 years what the answer is.
Sure,
please. I feel so passionately about what I'm about to say. I've been in this industry for pushing 40 years. When the retailer is the one who is speaking for the category, that is not a positive thing. And the retailer, I can speak to the United States, is a fragmented community. There's really only one retailer who can afford to go out there in a great big way. We are so missing the overarching marketing of what you used to do, from the De Beers standpoint. If we lose that, we have lost everything. All the talking about price is irrelevant. I took a quick look before this event on Instagram. I'm not a social media guru by any stretch of the imagination, but I went on to Instagram just to see what the National Diamond Council, what kind of reach they're having. They have 83,000 followers. Jared has 83,000 followers. Zale and Kays have 225,000 followers. Brilliant Earth has 750,000 followers. The message is not getting out there from this industry, and I think that is the greatest danger this industry faces.
I think
for Mind and Lab.
Yeah, I agree with Beryl, but to give some support to my colleagues at the NDC, they now got far more resources coming both from De Beers and Alrosa, as well as the other producers. So they'll be, towards $100 million, which is not what De Beers was historically, but it's not chicken feed either, getting significant. They've got about 130 million unique visitors coming through their websites. They're building, agree with Beryl, still ways to go in building social media, which is where all of the impact now takes place with influencers and social media. But I think they're, compared to 3 years ago or 2 years ago, they're in a different space. It'll take a little time to see that impact, but I'm much more optimistic. But what I agree with is that if we don't position the category then we'll lose consumers.
I'll give you my last 2 cents because I know we're running short on time, but again, I'm passionate on it. I'm thrilled that they're getting more money. I was thrilled to hear Bruce say this morning that De Beers is spending more money, although unfortunately I can't say I'm seeing it. But when National Diamond Council puts out their message, it was so focused to a broad consumer at the high end and the low end when it was Three Stone and Journey and Pendant and all of those things. And when we focus too much on high fashion and we focus too much at the high end, we've out-aspirationed ourselves, and we're defeating our purpose.
Yeah, I think they're in the audience, so hopefully
I'm
they're
sorry
listening.
if you all want to kill me, but that's what I think.
I think that there's some, just in the interest of time, I actually think we could continue for another 20, 30 minutes and cover a lot of interesting topics. We are going to have to wrap up quite soon. I think that it seems to me that it is clear that the going-in position of lab-grown diamonds and natural is completely different. That story is origin-based and the magic around the product. On the other hand, some consumers are buying lab-grown instead of natural. The crucial ingredient is to what extent this can stay differentiated in the consumer's eyes. The back end of it, the cost feeds into it to some extent, but it's really what the consumer values. And if there is not enough differentiation, we could continue building diamond equity that serves both lab-grown and natural. That would seem the potential risk. One question for you, Stephen, on this is we didn't talk about prestige jewelry houses. Do you see any signs or any belief that prestige jewelry houses will adopt lab-grown? How important is it that it stays the way it is now, that is not a part of their kind of high diamond offer?
Yeah, I think it's, again, I hate to speak for others, because who knows what people are thinking. My sense at the moment is that the enduring value of their product is so essential to their belief in what they're about. If you're in the high-end luxury jewelry, you inherently think you're selling things of enduring and, in reality, raising value over time. That's fundamental. It doesn't matter if it's a diamond, or the precious metals or the precious stones. So to the degree that that's their ethos, they'll want to stick there at least until they see where prices settle in this market. And we're some years, I think, away from that. The key for us in the natural sector is to make sure that their sustainability story is so compelling that they're comfortable with a natural product. And to me, so far, we haven't seen any of them go, but we'll see.
Stephen, that was a penultimate question. The final question goes to Beryl. It looks like, and this is the last question, it looks like you're wearing a lot of diamonds on you at the moment. Dare I ask whether they're natural or lab-grown?
If you have to ask, that's part of the problem.
My little babies here are natural.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you to the audience for having an immense amount of patience with this panel. I hope you found it interesting. I'm going to suggest that we all leave the stage and let Martin close this session out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anish, and thank you to all the panels. And that was a really interesting session. Ladies and gentlemen, we just need your 1 minute more attention, please, because it's a moment to recognize something very remarkable, very special. And I know we're going for lunch, and I know we're running behind schedule, but this is important. It's good to celebrate where we are as an industry, of course, but sometimes it's also important to reflect on where we've come from, more specifically, how we got there. And now and again, we need to shine a light on an individual brilliance and outstanding contribution to somebody. And that's where we are now. Stephen Lucia is someone that we all know very well. A gentleman, first and foremost. Despite being a Chelsea fan, he is a learned man. Having left the United States with an MBA, Stephen started to write what only can be described as a fascinating tale of diamonds. I think we are all here gathered today can say that Stephen is the De Beers Group. He has been the face of De Beers at countless conferences, congresses, investor relations meetings over the years. He even married into the family. He's traveled the world with De Beers and held virtually every position in the organization. But his contribution represents far more than just a series of prestigious titles. Ladies and gentlemen, you know as well as me that we're all part of a weird and wonderful world of diamonds. It moves at 100 miles an hour and is a constant state of flux and change. However, one thing which I hope will never change is the genuine close connection that we all have with this precious stone. There's something truly special about these ancient pieces of carbon, but I put it to you that Stephen Lucia, in who he is and in what he does, perfectly embodies the positive values we associate with diamonds. In nearly 40 years with De Beers, Stephen has known to represent what is good about our industry, and we owe him a huge gratitude for that. Stephen, it is safe to say that you have made your forever mark on our industry, and that is why we are delighted to give you the the Dubai Diamond Conference 2022 Lifetime Achievement Award. Ahmed, can I ask you to come up on stage with Stephen to present the award? Ladies and gentlemen, we're at the halfway mark. Lunch is served in the restaurant Saffron downstairs. If I can ask everyone to be back here in at 2 o'clock, 2:15, we will be starting the next session. Thank you very much and enjoy lunch. Bon appétit.